Today's going to be top 5 firearms for the end of the world as we know it. Okay, so as we've all seen, there's been a lot going on lately. We've had a guy that got assassinated just for speaking his mind at college campuses. The left has gone completely out of fucking control, and I don't think there's any way to possibly reel this back in. So if you don't have a gun, you need to get a gun. And if you do got some guns, well, here's some tips and tricks for those guns and what you can use them for. Out of my top 5 guns, my number 1 selection, a shotgun. Hands down, this is a cheap Turkish Winston car model 612, made in Turkey. It's basically a knockoff of Remington 870. It's in 12 gauge. Load, show, clear. And it works just as well as a Remington 870 I have found. Why would I pick a shotgun? The reason I would pick a shotgun is because, one, this was under $200. I think I bought this right around COVID for $180. I bought 2 of them. Even if you get a Mossberg 500, Mossberg 590, or Remington 870, they're all $500 or less. They're relatively cheap for shotguns. And there's a wide availability for ammo. There's cheap ammo, expensive ammo. And naturally, as you can see behind me, you can reload your own ammo for them. So that's my reason for picking this. It's cheap, it's effective, it will kill anything that walks this earth. Small bird shot for birds. Larger bird shot, number 4, number 5 for squirrels, turkeys. Buckshot for home defense. I personally use number 4 buckshot. Slugs for longer range. I've killed deer with shotguns. I've killed squirrels with shotguns. I've killed doves with shotguns. I've killed turkeys with shotguns. I've also got a Remington 870 and 20 gauge for those that are more sensitive to recoil. If you reload, you don't have to worry about that. That's why I love these things. If you're going to own a shotgun, I would recommend reloading. I cast 525 grain Lyman Sabos for this, and I also cast my own number 4 buckshot for it. In the end of the world scenario, you can use a wide range of pistol powders in this, and you can even use black powder, and this will cycle with black powder because you're not relying on a semi-automatic function. You are just racking a new shell in. Original shotguns were designed for black powder. Keep that in mind. So this is my number 1 choice. My number 2 choice is going to be a revolver. This is stuff that, like, things have gone to shit. I've got to grab 5 guns out of my gun safe. These are the 5 guns that are going with me. This is a Smith & Wesson Model 29 chambered in .44 Magnum. This is obviously an expensive revolver. You don't have to get an expensive revolver. Smith & Wesson makes airweights and .38 special, little snub noses that you can conceal carry. The reason I use this is for my number 4 choice, which we'll get to later. And I can reload these down to 44 special velocities and recoil, which is about 45 ACP recoil. It gives you 6 shots. You can fire them relatively quick with a double action trigger pull. And they're great for self-defense. They're great for hunting. Another good all-around thing to have. Elmer Keith killed a lot of deer with these. And I'm a big proponent of being able to make ammo work. Improvised munitions. So I cast 240 grain semi-wad cutters for this. 44 Magnum can be reloaded with black powder, and it will push a bullet out the barrel, a 240 grain bullet out the barrel, to, round about 600-700 feet per second, enough to kill something. You get 6 shots, which is, if you look at any kind of statistics, almost all self-defense shootings are resolved in 6 rounds or less. And I just like revolvers. So, if I had to conceal carry this, it's going to be hard, but, it'd be better to print and have something reliable. And yes, like I said with the black powder, this won't gunk up with black powder and it will still function because you are manually rotating the cylinder with every trigger pull. You're not relying on any kind of recoil operating, blowback operating, or gas operating to make this thing work. Revolvers are extremely reliable for that reason. And then this thing has a really nice single action trigger pull. Obviously, revolvers are going to be a little bit more expensive. You can get cheaper revolvers. You can get a Taurus. You can get Rossi, Birdie, whatever. Heritage used to make 45 long Colt revolvers. I'm not going to give you a specific caliber to use, but I would have a revolver, and I would have the stuff to reload it, and I would have a bullet mode to cast bullets for it. And I would understand and learn how to make black powder and how to refill primers. Primers can be refilled with Legends Cap Gun caps. pretty simple. So this would be a great tool. It's more easily concealed than a shotgun. This particular one is, and obviously if you get like an airweight or a 38 special or something smaller, then it's going to have even more concealable use. So after I bought my shotgun for home defense, my very next thing would be a revolver of some sort for self-defense. If you're looking for something that if you're looking for something where the lights go out and everything goes to shit and you can still make ammo for it, it's going to be easier to manufacture your own ammo for a revolver than it will be for a semi-automatic pistol. So my number 3 choice is going to be a semi-automatic pistol of some sort. Whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you're happy with. I prefer to have something that was either military issued at some point or is currently military issued. Now, that being said, this is 1911. There's an insane amount of parts for 1911s. It's spent over 100 years of military service. I think the Marine Corps was using these up until 2022. And that would have been the Colt M45 CQBP. This particular one is a Fusion Firearms 1911 CCO. It has the officer's grip, so shorter grip, with a commander length barrel, 4.25 inches. And we'll compare that to the full size, and you can see there's quite a bit of difference there. The grip's a little bit longer on the full size, the barrel's a little bit longer. I prefer a full size 1911 over a CCO because they run better, there's less recoil, you get a little bit longer sight picture, or you get more distance between the front sight and rear sight, which equates to more accuracy. And this is a T-Sauce. This is a Turkish-made 1911. It was $300-something. It works great. This was about $751, and I've done some work to it. I've obviously added ambidextrous safety and whatnot, and some G10 grips that are super thin. This is my concealed carry, everyday carry pistol. I started carrying this over my SIG P320 because of all the shit that's going on with SIG, and once that gets all unfucked, maybe I'll go back to carrying it. I also own an M9A4, a Beretta M9A4. I've had to send it back to the factory because it had barrel plating issues. So all of those guns were either prior issued or current issued. The M9A1 magazines will work for the M9A4. The reason I got these semi-automatic pistols is because 1911 magazines are cheap. 1911 45 ACP ammo is relatively cheap. The Beretta M9 magazines are cheap. 9mm ammo is extremely cheap. The SIG P320, Magpul started making magazines for them that are relatively cheap. There's a 9mm ammo is cheap. And then there's, a lot of parts. There's a lot of parts availability for these because they have been issued by law enforcement and military. So there's a huge market for surplus parts, aftermarket parts, for all of these. So that's my choice for semi-automatic pistol and why I would choose it. Downsides are, you're not going to be able to run black powder in any kind of semi-automatic pistol. It will just fucking gum up and you won't be able to use it. But 9mm and 45 ACP are both very receptive to cast bullets. There's a wide range of smokeless powders that you could use, and you could honestly nitrate your own damn powder and stuff it in there, and it would probably still run and cycle fine. It just has to be something smokeless. Hell, you could probably run them off almond pulver if you wanted, or potassium chlorate and sugar mixture. Just don't do that unless you absolutely have to. I'm not going to ever condone you do that. But, yeah. Those are my choices for semi-automatic pistols. The Lord's caliber. I've got bullet molds for it to cast my own bullets, and I reload that ammo. Okay, now I know there's a specific firearm that you have all wanted to see on this list, and it hasn't made this list yet. Well, guess what? It's not going to make this list yet either, because my next one is going to be a non-semi-automatic rifle of some sort. My particular one is a Marlin Model 1894 chambered in .44 Magnum. Hence why I have a revolver chambered in .44 Magnum. I've got ammo commonality there. The difference is that I can launch a 240 grain bullet out of that revolver, that 4-inch revolver, 1,150 feet per second. That same ammunition achieves 1,850 feet per second out of this rifle. I've killed almost all my deer that I've killed my entire life have been killed with shotguns, muzzleloaders, or pistol cartridge rifles. And I've killed a lot. As soon as Indiana legalized pistol cartridge rifles, I killed a fuck ton of deer with this thing. I've shot deer out to 130 yards with this thing, and it has a very basic Tasco 3-9 by 32 power scope that's been on it since I've owned it. So, is it a great scope? Not really. But, I've probably put 20 deer down with this thing. It's put a lot of meat in the freezer. And once again, I recommend a non-semi-automatic rifle. It was kind of a toss-up between this one and my Thompson Center Compass and 6.5 Creedmoor, but I feel like this one would be more friendly for cast bullets and black powder. You could use, I'm sure you could load 6.5 Creedmoor black powder and it worked fine. I don't know. But this thing will run cast bullets and black powder. Creedmoor, what happens with cast bullets is you get to a certain point where you're launching a cast bullet out of a barrel, and the RPM spins the bullet so fast the centrifugal force of the bullet will rip it apart. 5.56, you see, your standard 1 in 7 twist barrel out of a 5.56 NATO AR is going to spin a bullet at about anywhere from 300 to 350,000 RPMs. To put that in perspective, most race car engines run about 13,000 RPMs. So it's a lot of RPMs, a lot of revolutions per minute. And what'll happen is that bullet will basically just come apart, and it'll lead the piss out of your barrel too. This negates some of that because typically cast lead and powder coated bullets are good at 2,000 feet or below, and this 1,850 feet per second puts us right in that wheelhouse. I cast 240 grain semi-wad cutters for it, and I usually put that over 24 grains of Hodgins H110 with a standard primer, and this thing will shoot about 2 MOA. I shoot about 1-inch groups of 50 yards with it. It's not bad. And that's why I picked this. This gives you some range. It's going to give you more range than a shotgun, and this thing just puts deer. It stops them where you shot them. Then they're done. Especially with Hornady's 240 grain XTPs. Those things are great. Okay, number 5. Now what you've all been waiting for, fucking AR-15. It's going to be on there. Same reason as my choices for semi-automatic pistols. It's current military issued. Magazine interchangeability, ammunition interchangeability with the military. What you have to understand is that if it came down to it, push comes to shove, all your federal agencies use this. All your military, our military use it. All 5 branches of the military use it, except for that XM7 bullshit or whatever the fuck they're doing. And I think they're probably going to dump that motherfucker because they're having problems with it. This thing's been around since, 1950 was when Eugene Stoner designed it. Works great. So why am I going to pick this in this particular scenario? A couple reasons. This particular upper is chambered in 5.56 NATO. That gives you your military commonality. So, I don't know if you know, but during COVID, a lot of the military got pushed out for not wanting to get the jab. And the ones that remained, a lot of the ones that remained were, if I had to put things into certain specific terms, loyalists. They were loyalists, and a lot of the patriots kind of got pushed out. So now you've got these loyalists in the military. They're kind of just there for college. That's pretty much it. And you got a lot of feds that are the same way. And you have to understand, a lot of feds aren't fucking very good. If you want to understand how well trained the feds are, like ATF, FBI, whatnot, they got their asses handed to them in Waco until they burned the whole compound to the ground. Look up the 1986 Miami-Dade shootout with the FBI. So on and so forth. They're not very well trained. They're not very well disciplined. And most of them will end up being loot drops for this thing. So you can take their shit, use their ammo and magazines, and this bad daddy. A lot of the ones that they're going to drop are going to be select fire. So you could just use your upper on their lower, stuff like that. Now, this particular one is chambered in 5.56 NATO. Another great thing about this is CMMG makes a 22 LR conversion kit that I have one. And out of it, it's 1107. Just as accurate as like a Ruger 1022 or anything else. I was very surprised by that, especially when I was shooting CCI suppressor 970s. I have several ARs. This is a 16-inch barreled one. The ones that I was shooting the 970s out of was having great accuracy. That was a 10.5-inch barreled 5.56 upper with a pistol lower. This is a rifle. I've got AR rifles and AR pistols both. Another thing I'd like to talk about is the ability to change calibers fairly easily. This is a 300 blackout 16-inch rifle upper with a pistol length gas system. This will cycle almost anything. It'll cycle, slower pistol powders all the way up to fast rifle powders. The great thing about 300 Blackout is you can also duplex powders. So if you got real slow powders like IMR 7383, WCA 60, stuff like that, you can kick those with a little bit of pistol powder like VR5, Alliant Unique, stuff like that, and you can actually get these to cycle. 300 Blackout to cycle with that. I cast a 230 grain deep hollow point for these, and it's absolutely devastating on anything 200 yards and in. And then I also use 150 grain spear gold dots, which is devastating to anything 400 yards and in. So 300 Blackout is extremely versatile for me, and once again, it's very receptive to cast bullets. Like I said, you're going to be pushing 230 grain bullets about 1,500 feet per second out of this. That's right in the wheelhouse of cast bullets. I get about 2 MOA out of my cast bullets with it. Versus this, which is going to spin a cast bullet up to about 200,000 RPMs, 300,000 RPMs, and it's going to fly apart. And you're not going to have a good time shooting cast bullets out of this. So ultimately, is 5.56 better than 300 Blackout? Ballistically, yes. For survivability, like long-term survivability, no, because you're very limited on projectiles and powder with this. And with 300 Blackout, I can pretty much make anything work with it. Minus black powder. I'm not going to get black powder to work in it. So that's my top 5, guys. Now a bonus equipment. We're going to talk about bonus equipment. Now all these firearms that I showed you can be relatively expensive or relatively inexpensive depending what brand you get. Everything I showed you was relatively inexpensive here, under $1,000, except for the Smith & Wesson Model 29 revolver. That was $1,200. Having all these guns is all fine and dandy, but you're going to be a fucking loot drop unless you train. So you need to fucking train. You know, I'd rather you have a $500 rifle that you fucking spent, ammo on to train with than some, fucking Daniel Defense DDM4 V7 that you put fucking 50 rounds through and don't know what the fuck you're doing. So always train. And if you can afford it, get something like this. Now we're talking into big money purchases. This was $3,400. There's cheaper versions. But for all intents and purposes, this is mine. Expensive. AGM also makes a Rattler without the laser rangefinder that's cheaper. They make the Clarion, which is cheaper. They make a Rattler 256, which is, you're talking $700 or $800 getting into a usable thermal scope that you can use the thermal function to identify people out to 100 yards. Now this will identify people out to like 650 yards, but in our current situation where I typically you would find me in one of these situations, the farthest shot we got, we're on top of a hill in the woods, and the farthest shot we got is maybe 150 yards. And that's really pushing it. So thermal's great, but thermal's not the end all be all. But you have to understand the strengths and weaknesses of thermal. And if you can also afford it, I would get something like this. This is a PVS 14 Gen 3. Now, I plan on doing a lot of comparison videos with this. I've also got this in an ESD bag. This is a thermal monocular. This has a 160 resolution. It's not as good, but it's good enough to identify targets out to about 25 yards. And yes, it's wrapped in Faraday fabric. I don't want anything to happen to this. You never know what's going to happen, right? So always be prepared for the worst. And this is my PVS 14. It's a Noctis, which was formerly Carson. I got this off of nighthawkvision.com. There'll be a link in the description. This is Noctis Technologies. This is a Gen 3 PVS 14 white phosphor. This has a figure of merit of 1709. I'll load the spreadsheet here. Signal noise ratio like 26.7. All that sounds like mumbo jumbo. Basically, the higher the FOM, the better you can see out of it. This is honestly, in my opinion, better than what we were issued in the Marine Corps, because one is white phosphor instead of green. You can see stuff better. Two, this actually has better resolution than a lot of stuff that I used in the Marine Corps, but it's got a spot in the Zone 2, and that's why it was so cheap. I got this for $2,750, and it came with a skull crusher, and then I got the horn mount, the J-arm horn mount for it. That's is like $20 off of nighthawkvision.com. I think the skull crusher is like $20 or $30. you know, I'm not running a helmet. I spent too much money on this to afford a helmet to mount it on. So that's where I'm at. This stuff is great because unlike thermal, night vision is easier to navigate with. Thermal's hard to navigate with. It's hard to understand what you're seeing all the time unless you're looking at something that's hot. You see temperature. So, but this isn't as good at identifying targets and people and living things as thermal is. Thermal's better for that. If you can get it, I would recommend both. My plan is to navigate with this during deer season and then have my thermal scope on my rifle. That's how I'm going to run this. So this will actually, I'm left-handed, and this will sit over my right eye so I can bring my scope up to my left eye. And with that, I think we're good. If you found any kind of value or merit to this video, please like, subscribe. It really helps the channel. I think we get a bunch of views on stuff, but 98% of y'all ain't subscribed. It'd be helpful if you subscribed. And then, join my Discord. It's down the link's down in the comments. We have a good time in the Discord. A lot of times we'll be in the video chat, playing Fortnite, playing Baldur's Gate 3. Hell, we even play a little D&D in there. Come hang out with us. We'd love to see you. I'm going to get off here. Y'all have a good one. Love you.